Homework number 1. Topic number 1, two-step equations. When solving an equation, we always look for the constant first, typically, and we perform the additive inverse. If you don't have your own calculator, there is one on the left-hand side of the screen that, when clicked, will pop up on the bottom here. The subtraction key is the same as a negative key. So negative 18 plus 37 can be computed right on your screen. The answer is 19. In order to clear a coefficient, we're going to do the opposite of dividing, which is multiplying. Once you're done computing, you can type your answer here in the box. You can use your computer keypad, or you can open the virtual keypad here. Remember, the subtraction sign is the same as a negative. Once you click Submit, you can move on to the next problem by clicking this button in the upper right. Again, we start with the constants, and we use an additive inverse, and then we deal with the coefficients, and we use a multiplicative inverse. And once we're done, we type our answer down here in this answer field. Once you have completed all 5 questions, each of these blue marks will light up. Once it's done, it will tell you to move on to the next section. So let's move on to the next section now. Two-step equations with decimals. We're going to use the same inverse operations, except this time we're going to have decimal values instead of integers. So again, the opposite of adding 0.1 would be to subtract 0.1 from both sides. Be sure to copy all of the numbers that are left, as well as any negative signs. Remember, the opposite of dividing is multiplying, so we're going to multiply both sides, but we're also going to multiply by a negative so we can clear this sign and get C all by itself. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3.2. I'm going to open that calculator. I'm going to multiply 0.25 times negative 3.2. So 0.25 times negative 3.2. My answer is negative 0.8. I'm going to X out of this calculator and type my answer in the answer field. Again, in the upper right is how you get to the next problem. First step is to clear the constant by adding 0.9 to both sides. Don't forget, when you're rewriting, to copy any subtraction or negative symbols that might be here. Again, pick up your calculator to compute your last response. Negative 4.29 divided by 1.1. Okay, negative 3.9. We're going to move on to the third topic now, which is two-step equations with fractional coefficients. All right, so we have the same inverses as before. We're going to subtract the constant from both sides. And this time, instead of dividing by the coefficient, which is correct, you could write this is correct work, but we don't usually divide by fractions here. So what we're going to do instead of dividing by a fraction is we're going to compute the actual mathematics, which is multiplying by the reciprocal, where you flip the fraction upside down, like this. So divide by 2 and times by 2 cancel out, and multiply by 1 and divide by 1 cancel out, leaving us with an isolated variable. And now we have our answer, 24. Let's try this one more time. Again, we clear the constant first. And then when you have a fraction as a coefficient, you multiply both sides by the reciprocal, or the flip of the fraction. That will isolate our a, and now we just have to multiply 72 times 4/3. I'm going to use the calculator. 72 times the fraction 4/3. That gives us 96. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. 3-step linear equations. When you're solving problems that have more than 2 steps to them, it typically means that you have variables on both sides, like we have here in this equation. When you have variables on both sides, you cannot combine them. You cannot combine them together. You actually have to move them so that they are on the same side. And we don't actually move them, but what we can do is we can use an inverse operation so that we make it disappear on one side and appear on the other side. So I'm going to choose to take this 10x and make it disappear from the right by subtracting it, but remember you have to be fair, so I'm going to subtract it also from the left. And now it disappears here, but I have a math problem on the left-hand side. So I'm going to get 4x from this math problem. I need to recopy the -5, I need to rewrite the equal sign, and I need to rewrite the 31. And now we're back to a standard 2-step equation. Clear the constant by adding 5 to both sides. Clear the coefficient by dividing by that number, and you get your final answer. Let's type it here and try another one. Don't forget, if you have an error, you should read through all of these work steps. Now you'll notice in this example, they moved the 5s first, even though I did this first. So your work doesn't have to look identical to theirs, but the operations you're using have to be the same. All right, you have a choice when there's variables on both sides. You can either subtract 5x from both sides, and that would mean that there would be no letter on the left, or you could subtract 6x from both sides, and that would mean that there would be no letter on the right. It doesn't matter which one you choose. Both are correct. So now I have to add my constant here, and then I'm going to rewrite my final step. Looks like x will be equal to -4. All right, let's move on to the next topic. Next, we're going to solve an equation with distribution. This is the first level. We use distribution when we want to clear some parentheses. So we want the quantity y plus 7 4 times. So that means we want 4 y's and we want 4 7's. Once we multiply the outside value by both of the inside values, we stop. We do not do any more multiplication, but we do rewrite the rest of the problem. And now we're back to our standard two-step equation, where we need to clear the constant, and then we need to clear the coefficient. We're going to divide both sides by 4, and then we'll get our final answer. Use a calculator if you need to. Alright, I think you're getting the hang of it. Since the next section is also linear equations with distribution, but just a little bit harder, I think we'll go there now. Linear equations with distribution level 2. Alright, because this equation is so long, I'm going to take a screenshot and put it on another page. For this question, after we distribute to our first term, and then to our second term, be careful here, a negative 2 times a minus 2 is a plus 4. Once we stop distributing and we copy the rest of the question here, which was all the things that we didn't distribute to, so I'm going to write that in a different color here, plus x plus 2 equals negative 9. Okay, so the red item is what changed, and the blue items are the things that remain the same. Now you notice on this side of the left side of the equal sign, we have two variable terms, and we have two constant terms. And when they are on the same side of the equal sign, you're allowed to do what we call combine like terms, or perform the math that this statement makes, 4x plus x. That would be 5x. And the next statement says 4 plus 2, and that would make 6. Now we're going to bring down the rest of the sentence. We're going to compute just like we used to do before with our inverses. And then we're going to use the multiplicative inverse to separate this constant from the variable. And there you have it. Let's try another problem here. All right, we're going to distribute first. Negative 10x, negative 10, and then copy the rest. Negative 5x minus 2 equals negative 42. Now I'm going to start showing you some shortcuts here that you can use when you are solving your problems this year. So we're going to combine like terms. So this little blue link here, this little blue mark that I'm making, it's indicating to the reader that these are the two items I'm about to put together. And now I'm also going to do the same with my constants. Now they're underneath the numbers, not above the numbers. These indicate multiplication when they're up like this, and the low ones really just indicate the combining. So I'm going to get negative 12 equals negative 42. Now usually we would write add 12 to both sides. If you'd like, you can start leaving this step off and just performing adding 12 to both sides mentally or with your calculator. Negative 42 plus 12 is going to be negative 30. And then usually we would write divide by negative 15, divide by negative 15, but you can start leaving this step off and you can just start computing using your calculator that inverse operation, which would be 2. Finding basic patterns in tables. This is going to be a big topic for us in Unit 1. So let's review how we can find a missing value in a linear relationship. Now, a linear relationship is something that has a common or a constant difference. So we're looking for a common or constant difference, often referred to as a rate of change. So we look to see what's happening here as we jump from one value to the next. We can see here it's increasing by 1. And we can see down here it's increasing by 10 each time. So that must mean that the missing value must be 58. Let's try this one more time. This is increasing by 1. This is increasing by 6. So that must mean that the missing value is 26. Now, once you finish a topic and you've answered all 5 questions correctly, you'll notice up here in the right-hand corner, it no longer says next problem, it says next section. So the final section for us is adding and subtracting integers. You'll notice that it doesn't have a circle on the left, but it has a little clock. That means it's just a timed review, where it wants you to get 30 math facts correct in a row. So the timer is set to 200 seconds, which is a very long time, but you won't get credit for this part of the homework unless you actually get 30 correct in a row. As soon as you click start, the math facts will begin. -8 minus 9, 5 plus 3, and you're just going to keep clicking your answers until you reach 30 problems correct. So don't worry about this timer. You're not going to run out of time. But I put it up there so you could at least just keep track of how long it's taking you. And maybe the next time you try it, it takes you less time. If you get one wrong, the timer will stop and the game will end. You'll notice, however, if I go back to the screen, it shows that I didn't do anything. And that's because I won't get any credit for this section unless I get all 30 questions correct. Now beware, as soon as you reach 30 correct, it won't stop. It will keep going until you make a mistake or until you choose to stop the clock on your own. So you can start again each time. And if you see that you have a score of 30 or higher, you click the stop button. And that's it. That concludes homework number 1.